it's qualified because of uh, this provision of law, and it's still being used to um, against tenants and farm workers. And then, of course, we know libel. Libel is still a criminal act in the Philippines, and originally it was used by government against those who say bad things about government officials and especially media commentators. No? So we have seen this being used by the former president against Rappler, no? But this has evolved into cyber libel now, and even uh, posting in computers, internet can be punished by this. But these are still there to suppress expressions of dissent against government. So these laws and many other laws are still in place, and they are the cause of this systemic disadvantage to the farmers, fishers, and indigenous peoples. And as we know, this struggle of this sector has, before that, as we know that poverty in the Philippines is majority rural. And this is very common in rural areas. So just to give you this figure, the 2023 statistics on poverty, they define poverty as someone who
Attention
earns
please. Smoking is
less
not
than
allowed on the board.
2,759 a month. So in dollars, that is around $50. So just imagine $50 a month um, for a Filipino family. So 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 it's really very low threshold, and 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 this definition of poverty is not yet updated as of the moment, because to raise a family of five, you need more than that, even in here in the United States, as we experience, no, being living here. Anyway, that is as an ongoing struggle for Filipinos, especially those who are in the margins, the farmers, the fishers, and indigenous peoples. So social justice has been enshrined in our constitution, won by the marginalized sectors in the EDSA revolution that happened in 1987. And Article 12 gives out the social justice policy as a policy that guides all acts of government. And this policy is um, is uh, stated, no, in Article 12 that says that the goals of the national economy are more equitable distribution of opportunity, income, and wealth, and sustained increase in the amount of goods and services produced by the nation for the benefit of the people, and then expanding productivity is the key to raising the quality of life for all. So our question is really, how is this policy being implemented in all aspects of the economy? And in my presentation, I will show that there is some aspects of the economy or sectors of the economy that doesn't and do not experience this. And even if there are a lot of laws and programs, they still remain um, disadvantaged. And we will know why. So Article 13 just talks about uh, the several programs of the government for fishers, farmers, and indigenous peoples. You can read about the program on agrarian reform in Section 4. So it gives the rights to landless farmers to own the land they till. The Fisheries Code also on subsistence fishers and Indigenous Peoples' Rights Acts. These are all under Article 13, and some other sectors like youth, labor, women, all in Article 13, where specific programs are mandated by Constitution for government to implement the social justice program of equitable distribution of opportunities, income, and wealth. And I will now show you a film that we are working on uh, in Casiguran. It is an area in the Philippines located in Aurora province. And an economic zone is being built there in order for investments to go and be placed there. So a law was created. Actually, two laws were created without the consent of the communities. The communities being rural communities of farmers, fishers, and indigenous peoples. And there's, so I will show you um, the film on this.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
But can you hear
Okay.
us?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay,
Okay.
I'm just making sure that you're still hearing me because there's no caption here. Anyway, so the Aurora Pacific Economic Zone was created so that they will invite investors to the area, and the area is located in a very remote place that is frequented by typhoon in the Pacific side. And the law consolidated 12,954 hectares of land, which is mostly farmlands and indigenous people's land of the Dumagats. And they will build a special economic zone similar to Subic in that area. So the people there did not know that their land will be used as an economic zone. So when the government started to go and implement it and build the structures, they were surprised, and they already have the law. So what can they do about it? And they tried to protest with the government, but the government said that the national government said that they cannot do anything about it. So this is an um, ongoing struggle now because many of these lands are private. They are owned by farmers, and the fish could no longer fish because a port will be made there, and indigenous peoples, they are um, going to be displaced from their indigenous lands, the ancestral domains. And here we can see a clear political dynasty in Aurora, which is dominated by the Angara family. So this law was passed during the time when Angara Senior was senator, Angara Junior was congressperson, and Belia Angara as the governor. So um, it also brought division in the community because they wanted to bribe the indigenous peoples so that they agree on the use of their ancestral domain. And there were um, corruption allegations because many of the properties that were public, but because they were already um, occupied by the farmers and fisher folks, they were not recognized and went to the um, influential families in the area. So a lot of violations happened, but it was all you know not observed because of the strong political influence of the family then. And now, because uh, after the runway was made, um, it uh, it was attractive to the Chinese online gambling operators, the POGO, because in the area they can enjoy tax credit. They are allowed to do online gambling operations because it's a special economic zone. So it means that it has a different sets of standards in regulation of this, and it's attracting these kinds of businesses. So the promise of an economic zone did not happen, and huge uh, expense to the government, at the huge expense of the government, because the um, the area is now fenced off, and no and when typhoon um, the comes, the buildings are always damaged. So this is an example of government um, initiated projects without consultation to the people and benefiting not the people but those who are in power and the big businesses like Chinese companies. And another story of struggle is agrarian reform, and we some of you know this because this has been a long story in the Philippines of farmers who are tilling the lands but do not own the land they till because of hacienderos, those big landlords who um, got the land uh, from the Spanish government or the uh, big companies, agricultural companies. So the concentration of agricultural land is a problem, and it's a cause also of poverty in the rural areas. And in the recent laws that we have, it tries to give tenurial security to farmers by giving them leasehold and ownership of the land they till, and through agrarian reform program. And this program has distributed almost 5 million hectares of agricultural lands to 2.7 million farmers. But the problem with this program was that there was no support services provided to the farmers. So these farmers have a hard time maintaining the land as productive as it can be and marketing the produce to in order to earn and pay their debt. No? Usually, traders control the price of agricultural goods, and they could not pay back what they borrowed for for fertilizers and inputs for their agriculture. So this is an ongoing concern for many small farmers in the Philippines. And recently, Bongbong Marcos approved a law that forgive amortization debts of agrarian reform beneficiaries. At first, it looks very pro-farmer, but actually, if you look at this law, it legitimizes land ownership of those who already bought lands from the farmers due to um, hardship and the traders got them from the farmers who owed debts to them. So by forgiving the amortization debts of these agrarian reform farmers, it paved the way for clean ownership without annotation to the landlords who bought the lands already from the farmer. So it's a story that goes two steps backward because of a law that um, tried to lessen the power of farmers. And a big challenge to farmers now is the conversion of farmlands. You can see this in many areas in Luzon, in the Visayas, and this is one of the reason why rice production in the Philippines is very minimal because no more uh, lands for rice production um, are left because of this conversion. So what they do is they under the law this is prohibited. No, you cannot convert an irrigated land, but there are exceptions created by the local government, especially when this local government uses their zoning power to change the use the proposed or the um, assigned use of the land to non-agricultural purposes like residential, commercial, and industrial, similar to an economic zone. So these lands are lost to non-agricultural purposes, like what you see mostly in central Luzon, no? Where um, subdivisions are built, warehouses, and these non-agricultural uses. So it reduces the agricultural lands, and it also um, reduces the farmers' livelihood on this, as reported here by the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism. So this is very rampant now, and it's affecting um, the small farmers as well as the food security of the country. Let's go to the fisheries reform. Under the Constitution, subsistence fishers, these fishers that are small without uh, big equipment. They are allowed exclusive access to municipal waters that is 15 kilometers from the shore. Now, they have a problem because many of these resources, marine resources, are already destroyed and depleted. And another problem is their access to the sea because the beaches are already controlled by private resort owners, fencing the access to the sea. And the fisher folks have been displaced from the sea, from the access to the sea. So you can um, see this in many areas in Bohol, in Cebu, and in Boracay, where the coastline is owned by private resorts. And, and the public even cannot access the sea or the beach because of the exclusive use of the resource. But under the law, this is not allowed because this is considered public areas, the foreshore land. So um, that's another challenge now, especially to the small fisher folks. And the biggest challenge is China, also controlling the West Philippine Sea and the traditional fishing grounds. You can see here a picture of the fishers in Mindoro where their ship was slammed by a Chinese militia while they were fishing in the West Philippine Sea. So it's an issue of social justice, access of the small fishers to their traditional fishing grounds. And another example is Bajo de Masinloc in Zambales. You can see Bajo de Masinloc at the circled portion of the map at the west part of Manila. So this is part of Zambales, actually. And it's a very rich fishing ground where the Chinese prohibited the fishers from going and fishing to this, and even confiscated the catch that they have, the catch of our small fishers. So this is a huge problem now in the West Philippine Sea, and it's escalating, as you know, because the Chinese built artificial islands which has military capabilities, and that is impeding freedom of navigation under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. And then aside from that, there are also a lot of these traditional fishing grounds being used as pearl farms. One of them is in southern Palawan by the Jewelmer Pearl Farm. This is owned by the Coanco family, and they produce the South Sea pearls. As you can see in the picture, that's a very expensive pearl, and this is farmed here. But the problem of this is that these are traditional fishing grounds of the Bugsuk Malbog tribe. It's a tribe in the southern Philippines who live in this area and fish in this area. So now they could no longer fish here. And in fact, they are being charged criminally by Coanco of trespassing when they try to go here and fish. So this is an example of uh, small fishers' hardship in staying and thriving. Um, in the uh, current setup of the use of the sea. And let's go to the indigenous peoples, who is the most marginalized among the rural community. So there are 110 indigenous peoples group in the Philippines, and they are scattered from north to south, and some of them are still living um, w- w- in a community where their culture is preserved. No? Like you can maybe hear about the culture of the Kankanay, the Ifugao, the Mangyan in Mindoro, and the Ati in Boracay. So they still try to maintain their way of life. And in 1997, the government enacted the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, so the law that recognizes the right of indigenous peoples, the native title of indigenous peoples. But this native title was first recognized in, this is a trivia, no, in a in the U.S. Supreme Court, no, in Carino versus Insular Government of Philippines. So this has a long tradition in the U.S. recognizing native title, which was also implemented long before this 1997 act. Anyway, the ancestral domain covers land, water, and all the resources. So, if you imagine a mountain with river and with trees, those are part of ancestral domain, and those are recognized as ownership of the community, the indigenous community. And the problem is it conflicts with the Regalian doctrine of the state, where they say that the state owns the resources. So that's why there's a clash always when there's a mining project. It's always the state that is um, prevails over these kinds of projects, where they get the mines from the mountains that are under an ancestral domain. And uh, whenever the law requires that there should be free, prior, and informed consent from the indigenous community, but this doesn't happen. They usually manipulate the application to show that there is already free, prior, and informed consent, but it's just either a consultation, it's not consent, or it's just information, informing them that there's a project already, like the APECO, or sometimes they just get a portion of the indigenous community and uh, give them all the benefits, and that portion in the indigenous community leadership says yes, and then they will treat it as a consent of the whole community. So that is the struggle of the indigenous peoples, and many projects now are on mining because of the increased um, clean energy technologies that uses mining minerals from the Philippines, like nickel, copper. These are important components of electric vehicles, the, the important components for renewable energy. So as we see it, more pressure will be exerted to the ancestral lands, ancestral domain of the indigenous peoples, and energy is one of them also, where wind, geothermal energy, and oil also, which is being explored on on ancestral domain lands. And water, of course, because water is scarce already in the cities, and like the Metro Manila has a shortage of water, so they will get water from the rivers of the Dumagats in Rizal, which I will discuss in the next slide. The Kaliwa Dam. So Kaliwa Dam is a project of the government in partnership with China. So this is one of the uh, Belt Road Initiative of the Chinese government. It will produce 600 million liters of water for Metro Manila, but it will inundate the ancestral communities of the Dumagats, 100,000 residents, 6 sacred sites, and 291 hectares will be submerged. 5 out of the 6 Dumagat communities rejected this project, but they still continued with the project even without the free, prior, and informed consent of the majority of the Dumagats. Um, what they did was to manipulate the voting in order to get an FPIC. So you see that there are 5 out of 6 Dumagats that were not in favor. So then the next meeting that they had was to just invite the one group that was favorable, and did not inform the 5 communities who rejected. So when they call out that meeting, where the in favor Dumagat group attended, because they are favorable to it, because government gives them projects and they will not be flooded because they are located in another area of the ancestral domain. So they easily said, oh, there's already projects and blessings, and why will we reject this? So they approve. So that's why there's a tunnel construction ongoing. They started doing it at Infanta, Rizal. And these 5 communities who rejected started walking in February uh, 2023. Before I came to Minnesota, I joined this walk, and they were really um, plenty of Dumagats walk from Real, Quezon to Manila, but the government did not even meet them. So only the students and the church in Ateneo de Manila welcomed them, but still a struggle. And the local government of Infanta um, rejected them, the project, but again, it's still ongoing. The pressure from the national government is mounting. So these are some of the current struggles now of the indigenous peoples, aside from the other struggles that other groups are experiencing, like the groups in Mindanao, where they are experiencing violence and being killed because they wanted to establish schools for their children. So they are being killed. And the groups in northern Luzon who are opposing the Chico Dam, if you can still remember the Chico Dam, it's being revived, and now there is little voice there because of the threat of red tagging against them. So this this is the reality of the indigenous people's struggle in the Philippines, um, and and probably I can attest that they still need uh, help. So what can we do as um, concerned community? Maybe more educational sessions to learn about these issues of the farmers, the fishers, and indigenous people. So this is just an appetizer, so to speak. No? We can support uh, campaigns by these communities against uh, those who want to take their lands and livelihood from them. Um, Support projects that strengthens the community, like water projects that are being done by PSGM, energy projects, because these basic needs uh, are the ones that are offered by the private sector in order to woo the indigenous peoples, fishers, and farmers to agree on the projects that are promising development in the area, but to the contrary um, to what is promised. A library project for enhanced information and education, and then livelihood projects to make their uh, you know to strengthen their economic stand. And then so this is are all you know open for discussion. So if you have questions or some comments, I'm here to answer and address them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aison. Yep. I have a question.
Yes,
Like,
please.
are um you're saying it seems like the laws of the Philippines regarding the indigenous rights or the fisher folks, they're very good, but it is the implementation that is lacking. So how do we implement those laws so that it could be adhered to? So it is, yeah. So meaning, it seems the Philippine laws sometimes are even better than the US laws. And but somehow we just the Philippine just like the don't have the how to implement it is the question.
Thank you for the question. That's a good question because in the Philippines, the reason why laws are not implemented because those who have the mandate to implement them either are beholden to uh, interests from the private sector or their own interest. So it's so hard to go against our own interests. So that is why um, strengthening community participation through organizing and rights-based approaches helps in the implementation. Secondly, supporting leaders that are uh, for the social justice is another one. We've seen that when a leader of government uses resources for implementation of social justice, it's really um, a massive effect. Um, I experienced that when I was part of the Department of Agrarian Reform. We were able to distribute Hacienda Luisita, which was a tough implementation of agrarian reform law because we're going against the president. But since the leadership allowed it, then we were able to implement. So it's not an easy job. there are a lot of challenges in the Philippines, but there are that we can implement, like uh, going out to the streets, writing letters, advocating for laws and reforms, and the mere fact that there are people who are still researching and knowing more about these issues helps a lot in the implementation of the law. So we have to support uh, the research on this, more information sharing to the um, to all branches of government and civil society.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Aison. Any is there any question in the chat? There's nothing in the chat. So anybody?
I
Um,
have a couple of comments.
Oh, Gary.
I put in the chat a question of whether Kerwin Finagle was in the picture of the protesters in the front line because he was killed last summer in Bohol. He was a leader of indigenous peoples in Mindanao who was able to confront these agribusiness and mining companies. You mentioned libraries. I just got 200 pounds of books up to grade 6 to Puri Lahos, Colette's sister-in-law, who runs 2 Montessori schools, and she wants books for children. And I was just able to ship 200 pounds for only $75. So we can do things like that. The other source of books, by the way, for free in the Philippines is USAID, which no doubt is being happy to communities in order to gain favor for the bases that the United States now wants to fight China. And we have been seeing these killings, these abuses over the 50 years that I've been involved in the Philippines. They don't stop. Capitalism does not stop. And the rich families in the Philippines and foreign corporations are all there to grab lands, steal resources, and do all this. So I'm afraid that all of us have got to keep protesting as best we can each new project, each new incident, because these things are going on steadily and capitalism still marches on.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Gary.
uh,
Letitia,
Meg.
yeah.
Okay,
I
this is
think
Lita.
Letitia, just a sec, Letitia.
No, it's
Lita.
Lita.
Oh,
I have a
Letitia, I
question.
think Letitia is first. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay,
Letitia,
okay.
what's your,
Yeah.
Yeah,
your
I have a
question?
question for Aison, and that is, it looks like the U.S. is helping Marcos promote, and burnish the image of the Philippines as a democratic country. And I was just wondering, do you think that it would be effective for us to really lean on the U.S. president and say he really should press Marcos also on these issues that we are concerned about with regards to really running roughshod on the poor and indigenous peoples of the Philippines? I mean, the U.S. has really been just burnishing Marcos's image, it seems like.
Yes, that's a good observation. Right now, the U.S. Has a friendly stance with the Marcos because of China, because of Marcos' role in trying to push back against China. Um, However, Marcos can be pressured because he still has the U.S. was able to decide the case against his father, and that was the reason why agrarian reform was funded. It comes from the ill-gotten wealth. So if the U.S. Wants to still pursue or help in pursuing the recovery of the ill-gotten wealth, which is still a lot. It can help fund more projects to uplift the farmers, fishers, and indigenous peoples. So yes, they can do that.
Okay. Thanks, Aison. Lita?
Yes, thank you. Aison, first of all, you are a gem. Thank you so much for, well, uh, I don't know if I should say opening our eyes. Our eyes have been opened, but the information you have given us have been so helpful. It is so sad that the rights of our kababayans are suppressed and causing this systemic disadvantage on the part of the farmers. And living on $50 a month, that is not a surprise for their ongoing struggle. So what I'd like to request, if this is at all possible, is I know that there's probably about 20 participants in today's Zoom meeting. I think your presentation should be seen and should be heard by more people in our community. So I've been thinking, what if we have an in-person presentation and invite more people so more people will know about what's going on regarding our marginalized groups of kababayans in the Philippines. I cannot say that we live in comfort here, but we are so fortunate and blessed compared to our marginalized kababayans in the Philippines. And I would like more of our people in the community here in the state of Minnesota to know about your presentation. And so think about it. You will still be here until August, hopefully. And if there can be an in-person presentation at the PCM, invite more people who would be willing to know more about the marginalization of our kababayans in the Philippines. I think that would be great before you leave. It's just an idea.
Yes. Thank you, Ma'am Lita. Yes, I'd love to because we have not seen properly the film. I'd like to show the film because
Yes,
you
and you
will
know what?
understand it
Your
more.
wife has done such a wonderful job of filming, and so it'll be sad for us to not be able to see it. But of course, Paul and Meg are doing the best they can, and we always appreciate the work that they do for the community. Yeah, but think about the idea of having an in-person meeting, maybe at PCM, to do this presentation for a bigger audience.
Yes, I will be honored to do it. Thank you for that offer.
Let me give another option for individuals to help Lumad people. Our Philippine Scholar Group has had numerous Lumad students that we've supported through a group called Missionaries of the Assumption. These are Catholic nuns in Davao City who go up into the villages. They speak the languages of these people. They do not mention Jesus. They're not there to convert them, but they're there to honor them in their own spiritual existence and, of course, their struggles against the foreign groups trying to steal the land. I personally have sponsored 2 Lumad sisters, and they are now teachers, and they're earning a decent living as teachers in Mindanao. If you want, we can ask the nuns to select Lumad students that you individually can sponsor, and you will hear from them once a month, and you can learn and you can talk to them about the struggles of their own people.
Okay, thank you. I think Raul has been, okay, Raul.
Yeah,
Real quick.
okay.
I sponsor an ITA student.
Oh, it's, okay, Raul has the floor right now. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Aison, for the very informative talk. I'm just wondering, because I haven't stayed in I just visited, but I've never stayed long enough to get a feel for I don't know, the general sentiments. But back then, when I was still there, most of the lowlanders, so that means the non-indigenous communities, basically are wallowing in ignorance and prejudice against the indigenous communities. And I think that is really a big obstacle, because Meg, we can hear you. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm wondering if that has been a big obstacle, because there is no general sympathy by the population towards, the Aitas, towards the Dumagas, towards the people of the Cordilleras. And I've heard really, really offensive statements like, some of them still have tails because they're that primitive. I wonder if things have changed, or is that still the case? Yeah.
Yes, that was the previous image. They really look down, and the stigma is still there. But slowly, because of the awareness of people, that these groups have been there even before us, even before the government, or any one of us who are not indigenous. So they have this awareness, and now they are accepting, especially the richness of the culture as part
Mhm.
of the identity of the Philippines. But yeah, you cannot as the same also in the in the US, you cannot take out that ingrained bias because of the education system also. They did not you know thought about that the indigenous peoples are here even before the Spaniards came, or even
Right.
before. So
Right.
the educational system now are doing this. They have continuous information about indigenous culture, and it's being celebrated in the Philippines. There's an indigenous day, Indigenous Peoples Day. So and all this are part of training and
Right.
making aware the new generation. Yeah.
Okay.
So we
Yeah, I
have
was
a role
about to say,
in that.
we just have to wait for the older generation
or,
to
or we
pass
can
away.
we can also educate
Yeah, some of them.
our oh
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
Aison.
Let me
also.
comment on that, because 30 years ago in the Philippine Scholar Program, we were deliberately trying to help the Lumad people get to school. And of course, the government had no schools, no elementary schools up in the mountaintops. But further down in the bigger cities were high schools. So the nuns would start with one-room schoolhouses on mountaintops. And then when they got to be beyond grade 6, they would bring them down to like a boarding school, and they could go to the high school. This was not easy because the Lumad kids were terrible in math and science, and the local kids were very disrespectful and very discriminatory and very mean to them. So they were not really thriving in the public schools, the high schools that they could get to. So about 6, 8 years ago, there were 2 campuses were set up only for Lumad students. These were set, one in Tagum, one another place. They would bring them in, they lived in dormitories, they spoke their languages, and they were doing their best to help the Lumad get the advanced education. This worked out really good, and some of our scholars were going to those schools. But then the military decided any Lumad who wants to learn to read or write must be a communist.
Mhm.
And they were going after Lumad communities on behalf of plantations and mining
Right.
companies. But they were actually bombing and forcing them out, killing school administrators. They were actually targeting the Lumad people and trying to prevent education. And so a group called Save Our Schools emerged, and they were trying to help these campuses keep going. And I believe both campuses are now closed down. I believe the military, when students went to Cebu, there were a dozen of them